Hi there, I'm Lauren Cawston Gregg and I work here at Cambridge Regional College as a chef lecturer. Today we're going to learn how to spatchcock a poisson. So there's a couple of house rules, of course, that we need to start doing before we start actually breaking down and getting our poisson ready. It's by getting up a skillet here. You need to make sure it's really piping hot, but also make sure it's nice and clean and ready to go, but with minimal oil, because of course that will cause a fire. But also making sure that you have a good, reasonable chef's knife that is also a boning knife, but also a nice sharp pair of either butchery scissors or just a nice sharp pair of scissors that are clean and ready to go as well. When you're preparing any sort of poisson or any sort of poultry, you need to make sure that all your equipment are of course clean, but also you need to make sure that they're nice and sharp. This will of course make a better end product for you, but also cuts through and makes it a lot easier for yourself. So to start off with, there's a couple of things that we need to do with our poisson, and it's of course checking to make sure that it's healthy, it's nice and clean, and of course there's no offal inside. So we just open it up a little bit, make sure it's nice and clean. And then of course we'll look at, make sure everything is removed and everything looks nice and clean. If there is some hair, it's not too much of a drama because of course it can burn away. But if you're not overly wanting hair, you can pluck them away, or of course you can burn them off. So we're just going to turn to our legs, and of course we have something here, of course the Pearson's tongue. Some chefs might call it something different, but it's a good way that I remember how to do it when I demonstrate to my students. So with my legs, you also have a couple of wings and a couple of tips here. As a little tip, myself, I always try and prepare without these. The reason for it is sometimes they can catch and burn when you're doing skilleting or barbecuing. But of course, some chefs, what they might do as well is they might tuck it under to protect them, just to do it. But also, I do quite like using the tips for a bit more stock, just to build up a bit more of the flavour there. So what I'll start off with first, using my boning knife, I'm just going to ever so slightly find my little twist bit there in my joint. I'm just going to pull that one off, and I'm just going to do that one also. So then I've got my tip bits, and then I'm going to punt over my chicken, and then using my sharp knife, my sharp scissors, I'm just going to look at the spine, and I'm going to cut either side of the bone of the spine itself. Once all the way through, then do the other side of the spine. Perfect. And then you've got your spine all in one swoop, but also that's great for stocks. You then will have your carcass like so, ready to go. Some chefs will also do another way of preparing ready for it as well. They'll actually remove the centre bit to make it a little bit easier, so it's more even and more flatter. And the way that you can do that again is by getting your chef's knife and just ever so slightly go into the bit like that. And of course, and then you can literally, with your thumb, just push it out and it will move it like so. And again, that will go towards my stock, which when I go to fold over my chicken onto the other side, of course, it's nice and flat, which means it will have a nice even cook, so there won't be any areas where it might be slightly under compared to the rest of the actual bird. So far, we've got a nice hot skillet ready to go. It's nice and hot, you can see by the smokiness starting to appear, but also this is where we're going to now oil, but also season our bird. It's always best to make sure that you oil your bird before you season, because then it doesn't wash off any of the flavours, any of the seasoning. Depending on what you're wanting to do, if you're wanting to do a barbecue, you can of course add additional spices. Me personally today, we're just going to do a traditional rub, which is just salt and pepper. But of course you can add some smoky Cajun, or we can do some paprika, depending on what you would like in your spatchcock for. So just quickly wash my hands. We're going to have a little bit of oil. Like so. We're going to do a little bit of table salt. And a little bit of cracked black pepper. You can use ground. And then we're just going to rub it in like so. And we'll do the same with your hands, just like that. Okay. Perfect. So once you get to this stage, You want to make sure that your skillet is piping hot, because this is what we're going to get our lovely char. This will help elevate your presentation, your appearance, but also add additional flavour to it. So me personally, I always go skin side down first, really get that very hard sear, and you'll hear it as soon as it goes onto the skillet. When it comes down to doing spatchcock, this is the traditional way, but I know a lot of chefs nowadays will also do the beer can method as well of doing spatchcock, which of course is a great way to do it when you're doing a barbecue, but also you can infuse it with different flavours by using different type of charcoals or woods, all depending on what you're wanting to do. So when you are thinking about doing a spatchcock, think about your method and the cookery that you're going to do, because then you can alter it and of course twist and change all your recipes and your flavours to what you're wanting to serve it with. So the great way to know when of course your spatchcock or your poussin is ready to turn over to the other side, the great method of course is if you give your pan a little wiggle or just a little shuffle like so. If you notice that your chicken is actually starting to move ever so slightly, you know that it's formed a seal or a crust, and of course those sear marks are there. That means also that it will actually release a lot easier from the skillet, and then you'll be able to flip it over. This is a great way as well if you're doing fish and other types of meats as well. When you know that it's got that seal and it removes itself, you know then you of course can turn it over. This will take about 5-10 minutes depending on of course the heat of the skillet, but also if you are doing gas or electric or of course a barbecue. So do be mindful of your timings, all depending on the heat and of course where its placement is. Once you've got a good sear on both sides, I'll turn it over, do a second sear on the other side, and of course it will take about 10 to 15 minutes at about 200 degrees in an oven. Yep. So as you can see by the poussin now, it's got some fantastic sear marks, which is going to be really enhance that presentation when we go to serve it itself. But also it's nicely released from the skillet pan itself, which means of course it hasn't broken, it hasn't ripped, so it's going to really help that appearance and that presentation. So now I'm going to put this into the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes at about 200 degrees to really heat that up. So as you can see, my poussin's been in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes now. And as you can see, it's lovely and juicy. It's kept its colour, but also it's also nice and moist and juicy. This is now completely cooked. But the good way to test it, of course, is by sticking a probe into the fattest part, which of course will be the breast, making sure it hits above 75 degrees. This is poultry, so please be very mindful of your temperatures. If you notice a bit bloody, please put it back into the oven for that little bit longer. Or for example, if you are putting it on a barbecue, just place it not so much on the direct heat, but just still continue cooking it until you get that nice colour, okay? So this is now ready. Me personally, I would mostly serve this as a lovely Mexican style food. I'll put like a chiri sauce, some fresh herbs, some corn on the cob, and some nice potato wedges. All of this, of course, can be done in a kitchen like we've just done now, but also on a barbecue. Fantastic flavours, very fresh, but also don't be worried about adding flavour. If you're wanting to add more spice to it, like I was saying to you earlier on, you can now add an additional dry rub, or you could do a wet rub of some chili, some cayenne pepper, and of course your Cajun spice. Me personally, you just want to eat it straight away, but hopefully you enjoyed this video and speak to you soon.